I have one great indulgence. I have lesser indulgences plenty. But I have one great indulgence, and that is the opera. They just performed Don Giovanni here about 2 weeks ago. I tallied up the number of performances I've been to in my adult life, and it's over 100. And I'm well behind really devoted fans. I'm thinking of that today because it was about 13 years ago, just about this time of year, when I was announcing my departure from a congregation in Austin, Texas, and was on my way to Brooklyn, New York, and a friend in my Texas church gave me a videotape of Moonstruck, the movie. Some of you know this. I hope you know it. It's a fun movie. And the best part is that it was filmed in what was going to be my future neighborhood. I spent the next 13 years walking through a movie set. But you need to know the story here because in it, the character named Ronnie Camerari, and by the way, there really is a Camerari Brothers Bakery. I used to buy food there. Ronnie Camerari takes Loretta Castorini to a performance of La Bohème, the ultimate handkerchief opera. And he, Ronnie, is a tortured soul, having lost his hand, and his passion for Loretta and Puccini are indistinguishable. It all makes sense in the movie. He is passionate, she is passionate, the opera is passionate, love is passionate. And when her mother, played by Olympia Dukakis, says, "Are you in love with him?" She says, "Yeah, Ma, I love him awful." And she says, "That's too bad." Because Mom understands that passion is not all it's cracked up to be, or perhaps more than it's cracked up to be, because is passion like that really desirable? It's enthralling to behold. We love to see it, whether it be played out on the opera stage or on the soap opera screen. But is it a wonderful thing to live? No, it's not. It's the stuff of murder and misery, stuff we have seen altogether too much of in its religious form. Yeah, those people are passionate too. They really are passionate in the original sense of the word, which means to suffer. That's what passion means, as in Passion Week in the Christian tradition. Yeats' poem addresses this reality that it was written in the violence of the Irish fight for independence. He himself was an atheist and saw this story of the Second Coming as a miserable myth. And it still speaks today, doesn't it? How often have we heard those lines, "The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." You could point at almost any moment in political history and it fits like a glove. How many of the woes of today, Darfur, Chechnya, the whole of the Middle East, Malaysia, South America, New Orleans, are full of passionate intensity. No, passion is not a good thing. And intelligent folks have known this for a long time. If you talk to Mr. Aristotle, he'll say moderation is the best choice. If you talk to Mr. Lao Tzu, he will always say the balance of yin and yang is what makes things healthy. If you talk to the Buddha, he will tell you the middle way. But religion cannot abide moderation. It must be passionate. The day-to-dayness of life, its reliable but predictable sameness, breeds what the original sociologist Emil Durkheim called anomie, an existential boredom. That's a little bit like Peggy Lee saying, "Is that all there is?" So people turn to religion, and look what we do. We build these giant cathedrals that are majestic. We equip ourselves with organs and choirs. We hire high-paid speakers that can gesture madly. So you can come and say, at least, I felt passionate for a little while. We all want passion. We all want to see passion. We all want romance and adventure. We all want to be swept up into the plasma of intensity that I remember seeing on the screen about, nearly 20 years now, when my wife and I went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've mostly seen that movie? When the evil Nazis, you can't say the word Nazi without adding the word evil to it, in the desert have absconded with the lost Ark of the Covenant, the tables of the law, and they were going to open it up and release the power so they could conquer the world, and so they did. And out comes the Spirit of God, and in a frenzy of energy, garishly melts the flesh off of everyone who looks at it. When that happened, for the first time, I elbowed my wife and said, "That's my boss, you know." And you think you have problems. Actually, the idea of a face-to-face encounter with God is not limited to the cinema. When Moses sees God up on the mountain and comes back down, his face is literally leathery from the encounter. So he got a 12th degree sunburn. And ever after, he has to hide his face in a veil because it literally gives off light from having been too close to God. If you're a reader of the Mahabharata, I know you all are, so I only have to say that I'm reading from a passage called the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Gods. Prince Arjuna is encountering the god Krishna, who in the end is the ultimate God. And Arjuna says, as Moses does in other texts, "May I see thy visible self, Lord of all prayers." And so it says, did Arjuna behold this universe and all of its diversity in one great shape, blended in one body, and sore amazed, thrilled, dazzled, and dazed, Arjuna knelt, bowed his head, clasped his palms, and cried, "Yes, I have seen, I see, Lord, all is wrapped in thee." Yeah, it's exciting to read about, but you wouldn't want to be there. Reason and sense tell us that that passion is something we want to watch, not do. We who are grown-ups appreciate the Chinese blessing, "May you live in uninteresting times," which is a blessing. Drama is best seen from a distance. Passion is something to tell others about, not to take part in. Whether you're watching Spielberg or Shakespeare or Sophocles, the passion we really enjoy is always vicarious, and that's what makes it safe. But spirituality, that's what I'm here to talk about today. Liberal religious spirituality. That's something you have to do. You can't watch. You can't be spiritual from a distance. It's something you have to incorporate. But how can you do that and have that sense of meaningfulness without being consumed in the passion? I began talking about liberal religious spirituality last week and talked about worship. And one of the things we do when we come to worship is to get a little jolt of drama, a little passion, a little intensity. But do we want to live that way? I don't think so. And yet it's absolutely true that if I kept a record of all the sermons I got that got the most response, with people saying, "That was the best sermon I've heard in a long time," it's the ones where I'm railing and shouting and looking very earnest. And someone said, "You delivered that with a lot of oomph." I guess that's a technical term. Interesting, isn't it? Real passion is a little bit like an open fire. You can get quite burned, but you like to see it, and yet we don't want to live it. It's a challenge. From my study and experience, I have found that there are 4 elements that are part of a liberal religious spiritual discipline. Others use them too, but we need them. One is worship. Another is sacrifice, which I'll talk about another time, and study, which will come up a little later. But the last one is the one I want to talk about today, ministry. You'll notice that each of them can be verbs: to worship, to sacrifice, to study, and to minister, because I believe liberal spirituality is something we do, not something we have. Last week I examined worship, and I'll talk about the others elsewhere. But I want to start with ministry today because we're celebrating ministry, the one we have to each other. Now, ministry very simply is serving, to minister to. It can be lofty, like the prime minister who is stepping down after 10 years, or pedestrian, as in serving tables at the Four Friends coffee shop down the road. Clergy is one kind of ministry, but we all have them. We all want them. And you see, that's because everyone wants a spiritual life. We all want a spiritual life where we have that sense of meaning and purpose. It seems built into our nature. And I'm telling you that if you want to have a meaningful spiritual life, it must include a very distinct sense of ministry in your life, not to it. From you to others, not from others to you. Am I making myself clear? Well, how can we do that, though? Which sort of ministry do you have? Well, that's the reason I'm talking about passion today. The destructive power of passion is very real. But the destruction lies in an aspect, not in the passion itself. The destructive power of passion attaches to I really, really want something, and I'm going to go get it. Be it the girl, the boy, the money, the adventure, the power. That's where the operas come from, and the movies and the books. The passionate desire to go and get something.